Hi there. To start off today, I would like to remind you that history is a chain of events. It is an ongoing story of cause and effect. So let's remember back to some of the more recent modules that we've covered. The progressive spirit of reform, a lot of exciting things going on, even going back to the immigrants in urban life. And of course, the module before that was the industrial era after the Civil War. So our economy is booming, reforms are happening, we're becoming more progressive. And then the last module, Module 23, America becomes a world power after the Spanish American War and building the Panama Canal. We aren't the only ones who have become imperialistic. The European nations had been building empires for hundreds of years before we even started. Well, that's a great segue to our next module, which is World War I. It is inevitable when all of these nations are building more and more power that tensions will rise and a clash is going to happen. We have reached that point. World War I is also known as the Great War. That's what they called it at the time. I'm going to open this and give you a quick introduction to this war before you launch off into other lessons to learn more detail. So I'm going to open the book here and point out some things in here and even read some things from the book to you. It opens up with this image of what it typically looked like when you were fighting in World War I. It was trench warfare, where you were actually digging ditches or trenches, living in those trenches and fighting from those trenches. You'll learn more details about that as you progress. Just to help me remember what I wanted to point out to you, I have highlighted some of the text green. I don't know if you realize that you are able to do that in the online book, which is nice. You can actually highlight something and this comes up. You can pick what color you want to highlight it. You can add a note, which is cool. It's a really nice way to interact with the text. So here, to open this up, it says, even though World War I did not begin until 1914, the tensions that led to it dated back to the late 1800s. Over the years, many countries created alliances with one another. That means they're friends. This led to an atmosphere of distrust that eventually exploded into war. I'm now going to turn the page and read a little bit more here. Imagine you were there. Let's say you are walking past a newspaper stand when a headline catches your eye. Austria-Hungary's Archduke Francis Ferdinand assassinated in Sarajevo. Your first thought is, who's he? You pick up the paper and read about the Archduke and about the rising tensions in Europe related to his death. The article makes it sound like Europe is about to explode into war. I'm going to turn the page again. So that's the scenario. War is going to break out, obviously. It says, though Europe was at peace in the early 1900s, relations between European nations were not necessarily friendly. In fact, feelings of fear and distrust were growing among European powers such as Germany, France, Great Britain, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. This dangerous tension had several important causes. One cause of tension was the rise of nationalism in the 1800s. Nationalism is a strong sense of pride and loyalty to one's nation or culture. Nationalism inspired people who shared a language or culture to want to unite politically. In 1871, for example, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm I brought together several German states to form the nation of Germany. While nationalism helped bring stability to Germany, it caused instability in other places. The Empire of Austria-Hungary included people from many different cultural groups. One of these groups was the Slavs. Slavic nationalists wanted to break away from Austria-Hungary and join the independent Slavic country of Serbia on the Balkan Peninsula. Leaders of Austria-Hungary reacted angrily, seeing this movement as a threat to their empire. So let's look at Well, I'm not scrolling here. My computer froze. There we go. Sorry about that. That happens every once in a while. Let's look at the map here. This was Europe pre-World War I. So Austria-Hungary is this big empire we're talking about. And that's where this person is from. The heir to their throne was assassinated along with his wife. And that's going to be what gets this all started. And Serbia is this light purple one down here. These are the people that are a little rebellious toward Austria-Hungary. So I'm going to keep scrolling. I had mentioned nationalism was a cause of the war. Imperialism, I've mentioned as well. That definitely plays a role. The building of empires and people's power, one country's power really threatens the power of other countries. Militarism, that's something that was brought up in the last module. Japan had become very militaristic, but they aren't the only ones. When you pour all of those ingredients into the cauldron, it's going to bubble over. And that's exactly what happens. All you need is a spark. And the spark happened on June 28th, 1914, when Archduke Francis Ferdinand, heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated by a Serb nationalist. Here is a famous painting of that assassination. They were in a car, and the guy came up and shot them both. So that's how the war got started. Now, question is, how's the United States going to respond? This is a U.S. history class, not European history. So we obviously play a role. When this first broke out, America's position was to remain neutral. Most Americans wanted nothing to do with this war, and we tried to stay out of it as long as we could. Our president, who was Woodrow Wilson at the time, supported that. He did not want to get involved either. And you'll learn more about that later. Now I'm going to scroll past his comments. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of who is on what side. It is a world war, so many countries are involved. It says here, as the fighting started, the alliance between Austria-Hungary and Germany came to be known as the Central Powers. Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire later sided with the Central Powers. France, Russia, and Britain were known as the Allied Powers. Italy joined them in 1915. Here is basically a timeline of that. I'm going to try to make some sense of this for you in a note over here. So if we start in 1914, in June of 1914, that's when the Archduke was assassinated. He was from Austria-Hungary. And 1 month later, they declare war on the country where the assassin came from. So I'm going to put Serbia over here and Austria-Hungary. That's what got it all started. Now, not long after, you can see other countries joined. So in August of 1914, you see Russia, France, and Britain end up joining the war. Russia is kind of the one that got started because they were allies of Serbia. And then once Russia was in, England and France said, well, heck, we need to join too. We're going to help out. So I'm going to add all of them to the allies. But at the same time, you also have over here the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, and so did Bulgaria. Sorry, Bulgaria doesn't join until 1915. I got ahead of myself, but that's okay. We'll leave them there. Also in May of 1915, Italy, you could see here on the timeline, joined the war on the side of the Allies as well. So I'm going to add them to the story. Now, the war is going to drag on for a few years, from 1914 through 1915 through 1916, which isn't even labeled on here. And then, boom, you hit April 1917. And for reasons that you will learn later, the U.S. is going to join. And they, of course, will be on the side of the Allies. These are not the only nations involved, but they are the heavy hitters, the major players that get all of this going. And you will see how this all develops in later lessons. So I will leave you to it.